Hi, and welcome to week 5, chapter 6, where we're looking at existential therapy. One of my favorite things about this chapter is that it ties into a handout that I use often in my therapy. As you have been hearing a little bit from Corey, most therapists don't have a one-size-fits-all approach to therapy. You take little pieces from different theories that you use in moments where it's most appropriate. And I have a handout that talks about the 3 characteristics of a stress-hardy person, and it gives this idea that 3 things that make someone the most stress-hardy, meaning they're able to deal with stress a little better than others, are commitment, control, and challenge. And I've included the handout here below this video for you to be able to download and read through. I hope that number 1, it's something that you can reflect on and you'll be giving some input of how you see it applying to yourself in our discussion, and also it may be a handout that you use in the future with your clients. I use handouts a lot as things to try to teach the content of what I want to get across. Another thing I wanted to share with you is Viktor Frankl. It talks in your book about his writing a book called Man's Search for Meaning, an Intro to Logotherapy. And I actually read this book about 3 years ago and did it with a friend, and we were able to read it together and discuss it. It's not actually a psychological book so much as it's a story. It tells the story of how Viktor Frankl, who was already a trained psychologist who had studied under Adler, who had studied under Freud, how he as a psychologist was imprisoned in the Nazi internment camps during World War II, and as a prisoner he was there for over a year. I can't remember the exact length of time, and he really was amazed at seeing that some people seemed to only last weeks in the concentration camps, that the harsh conditions just beat them up and they, would just die sooner than others, and others could maybe sometimes survive years with very harsh conditions, the exact same. And he kind of wondered, why was it that some people were able to keep thriving while others really got beat down by their circumstances? So I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And there were always choices to make. Every day, every hour offered the opportunity to make a decision which determined whether you would or would not submit to those powers which threatened to rob you of your very self, your inner freedom, which determined whether or not you would become the plaything of circumstance, renouncing freedom and dignity to become molded into the form of the typical inmate. Seen from this point of view, the mental reactions of the inmates of a concentration camp must seem more to us than the mere expression of certain physical and sociological conditions. Even though conditions such as lack of sleep, insufficient food, and various mental stresses may suggest that the inmates were bound to react in certain ways, in the final analysis it became clear that the sort of person the prisoner became was the result of an inner decision and not the result of camp influences alone. Fundamentally, therefore, any man can, even under such circumstances, decide what shall become of him mentally and spiritually. He may retain his human dignity even in concentration camp. Dostoevsky, a philosopher, said once, "There is only one thing that I dread, not to be worthy of my sufferings." These words frequently came to my mind after I became acquainted with those martyrs whose behavior in camp, whose suffering and death bore witness to the fact that the last inner freedom cannot be lost. It can be said that they were worthy of their sufferings, The way they bore their suffering was a genuine inner achievement. It is this spiritual freedom which cannot be taken away that makes life meaningful and purposeful. An active life serves the purpose of giving man the opportunity to realize values in creative work, while a passive life of enjoyment affords him the opportunity to obtain fulfillment in experiencing beauty, art, or nature. But there is also purpose in that life which is almost barren of both creation and enjoyment, and which admits of but one possibility of high moral behavior, namely in man's attitude to his existence. An existence restricted by external forces, a creative life and a life of enjoyment are banned to him, but not only creativeness and enjoyment are meaningful. If there is a meaning in life at all, then there must be a meaning in suffering. If you're interested in learning more about it, I really recommend reading Man's Search for Meaning. The whole beginning just tells the story of his experiences in the camps, and then the end you get more of his philosophy that came out of it. But you can see that he was really influenced a lot by philosophers of his day. And one of the quotes that I want to mention from the book says that he was a fan of quoting Nietzsche, who was a philosopher who said, "He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how." Lastly, I've included on this page a quote from Chuck Swindoll that says, "Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it." And that's really in line with existential theory and what Viktor Frankl was saying. I hope that you will enjoy the content of this week and be able to apply some of it even to your own self.